Hello there, welcome to the pod. Today we are going to be chatting about my 10 favorite exercises. So if I had to choose only 10 movements, which ones would they be? I'm also going to offer up progressions of each exercise. So for example, if there is a version of an exercise that you may not be able to do just yet, I am going to outline where to start in order to build up the strength to do the version that I mentioned. I also provided links in the show notes to the exercises, or at least a variation of the exercises performed by me. And by the end of this episode, you're also going to know how to structure a foundational exercise program for yourself. As a quick caveat, I just want to say that these are the 10 that I would choose right now based on my current fitness and lifestyle priorities. It doesn't mean that this is the list for the rest of my life. It doesn't mean that all other exercises are terrible and I'd never do them or you should never do them, because our priorities shift and change over time. And also, I do more than 10 exercises over the course of a typical week. Having said that, these are the ones that I would select in an alternate universe if for some reason 10 was the arbitrary limit today. If you've been following me for a while, you almost certainly know what I am going to mention first and foremost in the number 1 slot: walking. We are kicking off my list with a bang. This is without a doubt my favorite form of exercise. And to be honest, in the context of my own life, I don't really think about walking as exercise. I think about it like eating and sleeping, in the sense that for me, it is a must, a non-negotiable. I've been hitting anywhere from 12 to 30,000 steps on a daily basis for like 15 years. And I've been talking about how underrated walking is as a fat loss modality for ages. Not to mention how great it is for things like mood stability, stress reduction, sleep quality, appetite regulation, and injury prevention. Walking is the GOAT exercise, greatest of all time, in my opinion. And folks overlook its value all the time because it's not sexy. However, it is wildly effective. Number 2, push-ups. I love push-ups. They hit the chest, front delts, and triceps really nicely. They also work your quote-unquote core, because when you're doing them properly, you should have a straight line from your heel to your hip to your shoulder throughout the whole set, meaning your abs and low back are engaged the entire time. If I was to pick a specific type, my go-to right now is the neutral grip deficit push-up on low parallel bars with my feet elevated, because I like to get a fairly exaggerated range of motion. If you want to see an example of this movement, I linked it below, or you can check out one of my most recent reels on Instagram titled Injury Proof Your Shoulders. If you'd like to implement push-ups into your routine, I would recommend starting on your knees and perfecting your form via full range of motion first and foremost, meaning your chest is touching the floor on every single rep. Do not shortchange yourself. Once you can do, say, 15 to 20 perfect reps from your knees under control, then you can move to your toes and again, emphasize full range of motion where you touch your chest to the floor every single time. As you transition, if you can only do, say, 1, 2, or 3 full reps from your toes at first, no problem. Complete those reps and then quickly move to your knees and complete a full set. Over time, you'll get stronger and stronger, and eventually you'll be doing full sets of 10, 15, 20, on your toes. Once that becomes rather easy, you can make things more challenging by elevating your hands and feet and getting more range of motion. And on and on and on. There are tons of progressions to experiment with. Number 3, the body weight row. So this is the perfect complement to the push-up in the sense that it's the exact opposite movement, being that the push-up is a pressing movement on the horizontal plane, which is just a fancy way of saying pushing out in front of you. And the body weight row is a rowing movement on the horizontal plane, which is just a fancy way of saying pulling out in front of you. So the push-up mimics pushing a door open, and the body weight row mimics pulling a door open. The body weight row can be done using a TRX, which are those independently moving black and yellow cloth ropes with handles on the ends. You can also do this movement on gymnastic rings, or by setting up a barbell in a rack, or on something like a Smith machine. There are tons of options. I mix in all the variations, but if I had to choose, I would go with the neutral grip body weight row on the TRX because it just feels the best for me, and I like that my hands, elbows, and shoulders have a little bit more room to move around into different positions throughout the repetition. Whereas with something like a barbell, everything is fairly fixed in the same place. No specific type is necessarily better or worse than the other. I just prefer the less fixed or rigid type of range of motion that the TRX offers. The gymnastic rings offer the same flexibility. If you want to start doing body weight rows, you can start with the bar or TRX or rings set up quite high, because the closer your head or torso is to the ground, the harder it's going to be because you are resisting more of your own weight. As you get stronger and stronger, you can begin to lower the bar or whatever you're holding on to, and eventually you'll be almost horizontal or parallel to the ground, which is essentially the exact opposite of a push-up position. So you're just flipped around. Once that becomes easy, you can even elevate your feet to increase the difficulty and so on. Number 4, handstands. I love all things handstands. Balancing, handstand walking, handstand push-ups. It's all so much fun. And I find it really rewarding to work on body weight skills like this and see progress. Handstands obviously work the shoulders and triceps. However, they strengthen your grip and forearms a ton because of the constant rebalancing and grabbing of the ground. They also work the lats quite a bit, which are the muscles running along the side of your torso underneath your arms when they're relaxed at your sides. Full-on handstand push-ups are really hard, even against a wall. I can do a small set, but these are still a work in progress for me. Variations like the pike push-up are a great way to strengthen your shoulders in that overhead pushing position, and also kicking up on a wall to get comfortable being upside down and just holding yourself there is an awesome way to build up to this movement as well. You can also improve your overhead pushing strength via things like overhead barbell and dumbbell presses. They're both great movements too. Number 5, pull-ups. The pull-up is the perfect complement to the handstand or handstand push-up because it's essentially the exact opposite motion. Instead of pushing overhead, the pull-up is an overhead pulling pattern. There are tons of different variations that you can do for the pull-up with a whole bunch of different grips, as well as things like butterfly and chest-to-bar pull-ups, which you'll often see CrossFitters doing. Personally, I like mixing in all the different types. However, if I had to choose, I'd go with a plain and simple neutral grip pull-up on the bars. They're my fave. If you're working on your pull-up, The assisted pull-up machine, if you have access to one in your gym, is awesome because it's pin loaded. And so as you get stronger, you can use more and more of your own weight and essentially get less help or assistance from the machine itself. If you don't have access to one of those, you can always use a band. You can have someone help you by grabbing your waist and giving you the assistance that you need. You can also do negatives. And so that's when you step up on a box, jump up to the top of the bar, and lower yourself as slowly as possible. And this works because it's a lot easier to lower yourself than it is to pull yourself up. Things like lat pull downs can be helpful accessory movements to improve your overhead pulling strength too. And my number one tip or suggestion in terms of the pull up would be to start with full range of motion. I remember seeing this video of the actor Mark Wahlberg on the Ellen show saying that he could do like 40 consecutive pull-ups, and he emphasized the fact that they were quote unquote clean ones. Spoiler alert, they were not clean ones. He literally didn't do one single full rep, and I see this in the gym so often. Pull-ups are really hard, and so typically you'll see folks, more often men, that don't like the idea of not being able to do a bunch of them. And so they just do tiny little pulses, essentially, at the top of the range of motion where it's the easiest. The thing is that they then get stronger and stronger in that tiny little range of motion, but if they had to do a single top to bottom rep, they couldn't do one. So point being, start with full range of motion. And yes, it will take longer for you to get your first pull-up. However, it will be an actual pull-up. Number 6, lunges. I love the barbell back squat and the front squat. However, barbell versions of the squat just don't feel amazing for me. And so if I had to choose a squatting-like pattern to strengthen my legs, I would choose the walking lunge. I love lunges because they are unilateral, meaning you can work one leg at a time, and so both limbs tend to get equally as independently strong. And also, there are just a ton of lunging variations that you can do by taking a longer step, a shorter step, manipulate your torso in different ways that will emphasize different areas of your legs. You can lean super far forward. You can do reverse lunges, side lunges, or Cossack style squats. You can hold dumbbells for added resistance. Lunges are super versatile. Now, if you're not a fan of lunges specifically, but you like the idea of a unilateral exercise for the legs, you can do something like a step up onto a bench or box and get a ton of the same benefits as a lunge. I really like step ups as well. However, if I had to choose between the two, I'd go with the lunge. You can also just squat. Squats are amazing. And I do a fair bit of body weight squatting, mostly for mobility purposes. It feels awesome. Number 7 is the deadlift. I'll be honest, I don't love deadlifting. However, it's just such an amazing movement to strengthen the entire posterior chain, which is essentially everything from the base of your head all the way down to your heels. It's also great for grip and forearm strength. The core is heavily involved via the abs and low back, of course. Your feet are being trained, especially if you deadlift without shoes or using a flat shoe like a Converse Chuck Taylor, for example. If I had to choose one specific type, I'd likely go with the trap bar or hex bar deadlift. And that's the bar that you sort of step into and you're able to hold the bar at your sides versus out in front of you like you would with a traditional barbell. I also mix in the traditional deadlift. I'll use heavier kettlebells to deadlift. I might use dumbbells from time to time. But again, if I had to pick, I'd go trap bar. Also, a lot of folks don't deadlift because they tweaked their back at some point in their lives, and now they've told themselves a story about how they have a weak back. And truth be told, everyone has tweaked a muscle or two in their back at one point or another. The deadlift is an amazing way to strengthen your back, meaning it's essentially therapy for the back itself, because avoiding something that is strength promoting for your back is actually keeping it weak, right? And rehab or physio is essentially just another word for strength training, meaning don't fear the deadlift. Get your form down, work up in weight slowly, and you can build a strong and super resilient back. Side note, walking is also a miracle for back pain and avoiding back injuries. If you are experiencing pain or want to avoid it, hit 10,000 steps per day for the next 30 days. And if you are not in less pain, I would be very surprised. Number 8 is toes to bar. This is a CrossFit movement, and it's essentially where you hang from a bar and swing your legs up until your toes make contact with the bar. You then swing your legs down and behind you, back up again, and repeat. There is a fair bit of momentum as well as a bit of skill involved in this movement. However, it still works very effectively, and I really like it. If you don't want to do toes to bar and you'd prefer to do a different ab movement, you can do something like a hanging leg raise. It's very similar and involves a lot less momentum and a lot more control. Lying leg raises are another variation, and none of these is necessarily better than the other. They're just different. The cool thing about the hanging versions is that we also get the benefit of grip strength via holding on to the bar itself. Number 9 is running. I used to absolutely despise running because when I was playing soccer, football, and basketball when I was younger, I developed a really poor association with running because a lot of my coaches used it as a tool for punishment, essentially. If someone was late to practice or we executed poorly in a game or you name it, running was often a consequence of something that didn't go well. Now, as an adult, I've always really liked the idea of going for runs because it was super accessible, a great way to see a city and get out in nature. However, I had so much arthritic knee pain that it just wasn't enjoyable. Fortunately, I've figured out the culprit of the arthritic knee pain, which was actually just a consequence of consuming far too much oxalate in my diet. And so now I follow a low oxalate approach, and voila, I've been getting more and more into running over the last couple of years. And I will say that there is nothing quite like a runner's high. I've completed 1,000,001 traditional gym workouts in my life, and how you feel after one of those workouts versus how you feel post-run is incomparable. It's so different. The runner's high is exponentially more euphoric. I absolutely love it. Number 10 is cycling. I fell in love with cycling in my mid to late 20s, and it's just so fun. Cycling is super unique because you can cover such large distances in such a short period of time without something like a car. I find it super freeing and really empowering. Now, I don't cycle all that much simply because I travel so often, and I'm just not that guy that's going to pack up my bike and lug it along with me. However, it is still a huge passion of mine. Similar to the runner's high, a cycling high is almost equally as great, in my opinion. There's just something about longer bouts of cardiovascular exercise that really get those feel-good chemicals flowing. Okay, I've got a bonus movement or form of movement that I'm going to mention, and I didn't add it to my list just because, similar to walking, I don't really see it as exercise. However, it's still really important to me, and it is mobility work. So stretching and things like cars controlled articular rotations. Feel free to Google CARs if you'd like to. Great stuff. Mobility is something that I've grown to appreciate a lot more as I've gotten older, and it's not because my body is breaking down or I need to stretch now versus I didn't before. It's just that I enjoy it now, and I didn't enjoy it before. I absolutely could have benefited from it earlier in my life. I just straight up didn't like doing it, and so I didn't. As of the last year-ish, I've started doing some mobility work first thing in the morning, and it just feels really good. I also sprinkle some in throughout the day, in between bouts of work, and again, it just feels good to do. I've also noticed that I'm getting more and more mobile and flexible, which is an added benefit. Okay, so that's my list, and zooming out a little bit, if you look at just about any foundational workout program, you are going to have 6 key movement patterns, which are a horizontal push and pull, the push-up and the bodyweight row, a vertical push and pull, the handstand push-up and pull-up, and a squat and hinge pattern, the lunge and the deadlift. Those are the meat and potatoes movement patterns. And so using that framework, you can essentially just make your own workout program and plug in different variations of those movements that you want to do. It's pretty simple stuff. For example, for the horizontal push and pull, for the push, you could do a push-up, a bench press, a dumbbell press, a machine press, etc. For the horizontal pull, you could do a bodyweight row, a bent over barbell row, a bent over dumbbell row, a chest supported row, a seated cable row, and the list goes on. Plug and play a bunch of variations for each of those 6 movement patterns, and you've got a resistance training program. Also, you may have noticed that I heavily favor body weight movements like a push-up as opposed to a bench press or a pull-up as opposed to a lat pull down. And I do this just because it feels better for me. My joints and connective tissues tend to prefer body weight movements. Also, I just like moving my own body through space more so than doing external loads via dumbbells, barbells, etc. It's not necessarily better, it's just my preference. So that's it. My current 10 favorite exercises list. Now, if you're interested in applying for one-on-one nutritional coaching and or workout design with me, you can click the link in the description below or head on over to n1fitness.com/coaching. If you're finding this info helpful and you'd like to, feel free to leave the pod a review on your favorite podcast platform. And you can follow me on Instagram at N1Fitness. On TikTok, I'm at the N1Fitness, and on YouTube, I am at Marcus Sadu/N1Fitness. If you want to stay up to date on the newest episode releases, you can hit the subscribe button. Thanks for tuning in. I hope that you found this episode useful, and I will catch you on the next one. See ya.